welcome back. We're with Mental Health Chats. I'm Claire Davis, and we are all about emotional fitness and bringing emotional fitness into your life. And today we've got Robert Miller. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Hello. Thanks, Claire. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Robert. And firstly, I just want you to tell everybody where you're from. So whereabouts are you calling from?
I am based just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina in the U.S.
North Carolina. We haven't had a guest from North Carolina. We've had a few guests from the US, but North Carolina, very interesting. It's a place I'll have to come to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll come and visit you. So we're talking about sleep apnea. So first of all, before we go into sleep apnea, would you like to tell everybody who is Robert Miller?
Yeah, so I thanks for allowing me to join you today. I am the currently in my current position, I'm the vice president of sleep business with Apria Healthcare. It's one of the largest home medical equipment providers in the U.S. I have been involved in and am a registered sleep technologist. I've been involved in sleep medicine for I think about 28 years now. I lost track after 20 years, I think. So in various roles, sales positions, business development positions, and now in my current role.
Brilliant. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you do when you say sort of treatments for sleep, etc.? What does that mean?
Yeah, so for patients who are diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea, there are options for those patients. And it's great that they have choices, because the gold standard for patients to be treated for sleep apnea would be continuous positive airway pressure. It's essentially a device that sits on the bedside. It has a mask that the patient wears during the nighttime, and it provides basically an air splint to keep the patient's airway open while they're sleeping, and eliminates all snoring and sleep apnea events so they're able to sleep normally.
Wow. So there might be some people who are watching this or listening who are wondering what the definition of sleep apnea is. So what does it actually mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the actual definition of sleep apnea would be a complete cessation of airflow for at least 10 seconds or longer. In fact, there are some patients who have significantly longer than 10 seconds, 60 seconds, 80-second types of apneas, where there's an obstruction in the airway. You would physically see the person continuing to produce effort to try to breathe. In fact, if you know anyone who snores or have witnessed sleep apnea, yourself, you would know that the person typically terminates the apnea with a big sort of loud snore, and then they can resume breathing again. But it's that disrupted pattern that occurs over the course of the nighttime that it will cause oxygen desaturations for the patient, and then certainly it activates the brain and arouses the patient out of whatever stage of sleep they're in, and continues to put them back into a lighter stage of sleep, so they have unrestored sleep during the night.
Oh, wow. So unrestored sleep. So do they actually stop breathing as well?
They actually stop breathing. There are some other types of sleep apnea that are related to certain types of respiratory or neurological issues, where there is a cessation of breathing, but it's not obstructive in nature. It literally is that the patient just stops breathing. There's no effort. There's no airflow for greater than 10 seconds. So any type of snoring or obstruction would fall into the obstructive sleep apnea category. And that's where most patients really would lie who receive the diagnosis of sleep disorder breathing. So
it would be quite detrimental for them to have a good quality sleep, wouldn't it, Robert?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, typical long-term effects of having obstructive sleep apnea, I know that there are certainly patients who have strokes during the nighttime as a part of having obstructive sleep apnea. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, from a cardiovascular standpoint, as to whether it's the sleep apnea that produces the cardiovascular issues, or if the patient has cardiovascular issues that are just exacerbated by the sleep apnea.
Wow, this is so interesting. So would you mind just going through how people could treat this? So do you have any primary ways that people could treat sleep apnea?
Absolutely. So I mentioned CPAP earlier, and that really is the gold standard of being able to treat patients for sleep apnea. There are some challenges with CPAP though for patients, and again, CPAP stands for continuous positive airway pressure. The thought of being able to wear a mask that's blowing a direct current of air, continuously all night long is a bit difficult for some patients, particularly if they're claustrophobic or are long-term mouth breathers and just unable to breathe through their nose. So typically the CPAP adherence that you would hear collectively across the industry would be about 50% for patients, which leaves 50% of the patients who are diagnosed without a treatment unless they're able to find some of the other options that are available.
Yeah, so that's one option. That's called, how do you spell that?
CPAP.
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 Okay, lovely. Thank you. And then are there any other treatments in for that other 50% of people?
There are. Probably the one of the most recognized, because there's just a lot of there's really a lot of information, and I would say advertisements related to the Inspire medical surgery. So there is a surgical procedure. It's a procedure that allows the patient to have a stimulator put in that would actually, it pulls the tongue forward and to the side to keep the airway open during the nighttime for the patient. So it's Inspire Medical, really, they are the worldwide leader in that particular space, and they do a lot of advertising for sleep apnea. So they are a great option for patients who are looking for other options other than CPAP.
Wow, that's interesting. You're opening my world here. I've never heard of
Yeah.
any of those. And do many people opt for that operation, or is it something that people wouldn't want?
They do, and it's interesting. It's actually a therapy that's been it's widely covered by most payers, and I would say in comparison to CPAP, it's still a very small patient population, which leads us to the other treatment option, which I would say probably would be the most widely sought out today, because over the last year and a half, there's been a recall of a certain manufacturer's CPAP devices. And it's left a shortage in the industry of available CPAP units for patients who need to be treated. So they've been able to seek out these other treatment options, and oral appliance therapy falls into that category as well as an alternative treatment.
Yeah. So can you explain that alternative treatment in a bit more detail for us?
Certainly. So a custom oral appliance, there's really two different sort of versions of an oral appliance for a patient. There are oral appliances that are readily available online. You can go and purchase those units. You may be able to put the unit in boiling water and then fit it to your particular dental profile and in order to help with snoring. But those are not the ones that you have to go into a dentist that are custom oral appliance. That custom oral appliance really is to treat obstructive sleep apnea, and they've been designated as a treatment for sleep apnea. And you have to go through the process of being fitted by a dentist. They will mold and develop the unit for you. You go back in, and then there's some follow-up that's done to ensure that the device is essentially protruding the jaw forward enough to keep the airway open and eliminate sleep apnea and snoring for those patients as well.
Wow, that's so interesting. You've opened my eyes to things that I was not aware of. So thank you so much, Robert, for your wise words. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are watching or listening out there who would love to get in contact with you. So where could people find you?
Yeah, I'm easily, you can find me probably most easily on LinkedIn. And if anyone who's out there who's listening, also have a podcast. It's called Sleep Tech Talk. And we interview certain people who are involved in the sleep industry who have made an impact or who are sort of new superstars in the world of sleep medicine and, are contributing in different ways through different types of technology. With a focus really on, because the three guys who are all co-hosts of the show, we all have sleep tech backgrounds. And then have all three also moved into sales roles over the years. So we're just trying to stay true to our roots and really have an avenue to highlight some things that people are doing to change patients' lives who have sleep disorder breathing.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I love the wording that you use, which change people's lives, because if we're lacking sleep, it's so detrimental to our health and our mental health. And we're all about emotional fitness to actually help people. So thank you so much, because sleep is probably the most important thing for our health and mental health, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of the same symptoms that you would recognize in a patient who has depression are also present in a patient who is sleep deprived. So there certainly is some crossover of those patient populations. I don't think that's an issue of one causing the other, but it certainly is for a patient who who has issues with mental health. It absolutely would be worthwhile to be evaluated for sleep apnea, because insomnia would be another, that would be another issue that patients who are sort of challenged in that area would also potentially have an issue with.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being there to help people. And thank you for your time today and being a guest as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Claire.
Take care.